All right, so the last video we left off, I just been admitted to the emergency room, and then kind of went from the emergency room. They admitted me into the hospital to find out what's going on with my legs, and they admitted me on the 20. I went into the emergency room on the 22nd, 23rd. They actually admitted me into the hospital in the middle of the night, so I got my room on the 6th floor of this hospital on the 23rd. And this video is kind of going to pick up where the last video left off as far as what my treatment was or tests that they did and what they may or may not have found. Also, this video is going to be heavy on my testimony and what I went through and kind of my struggle with God. I think I was there. I don't know for sure. I think I was there about 13 or 14 days in the hospital before I was transferred to acute rehab. So during that time, me and God went through quite a bit, or God and I went through quite a bit. But I'll get into that more later in the video because it didn't really come into play until about 3 or 4 days in. So the first day that I was officially admitted was on the 6th floor. 6th floor at this particular hospital is pretty crazy. I think it's one level down from the ICU, and it's for people that need a lot of attention, I guess. And there's no resting or sleep there because there's constantly people. I was in a room by myself. I think most of the rooms you have, it's just one person, but the door's open. Even if it wasn't open, it wouldn't matter because there's constant chaos and running around and people screaming, and they check on you. They were checking on me almost every hour or more. I was getting blood tests probably 3 times a day. I had some kind of heart monitor hooked because they were real concerned about my heart to begin with. For the first, I guess, 8 days or so, I had this heart machine hooked to my chest. There was probably, I think, 12 leads going all different parts of my chest. And then there was this little wireless box that was pretty heavy. So it was heavy, and then it would pull the leads out. And as soon as that would happen, the alarm goes off. And somebody has to come in and reconnect it if I couldn't get it, which usually I couldn't. And they have to call this center, I guess, that monitors these machines, and they have to say, hey, we got to connect it back up or whatever. And then the machine runs on, like, I think double A's or maybe C batteries. I don't remember, but they would go dead like every 3 to 6 hours. So they had to come in and change the batteries. The machine would go off. Somebody would call them. So I was dealing with that, and then during the day I was pretty much being ran in and out a lot in the beginning, getting tests done. So I wasn't, and then at night, like I said, you couldn't sleep at night because there was so much activity on this floor, and so that's how that went. So the first Tuesday, they took me down for MRIs right away. And the first thing I was informed was these MRIs are some of the smallest MRI and oldest MRI machines that they have available, and that's all they have at this particular hospital. And actually, when I was there, they were getting new MRI machines, bigger ones, but they were not anywhere near being installed yet. And I'm a big guy. I'm about 6'5", 6'6", and I weigh anywhere from 270 to 280 pounds normally. So I'm not a small guy, and when they would stick me in the MRI, literally it would fold my shoulders up because the tube was so small, and I could take my nose and go like that to the top of the MRI tube. And I'm not particularly claustrophobic, but it was not a good experience, and I'd never been in an MRI, so I didn't know anything about it. And I just told myself, I'm just going to go in here. I was freaking out a little bit, but I said, I'm just going to tough it out and just pray while I'm in here. And, of course, I get in there and start to pray, and then all these loud noises. And like I said, I've never been in an MRI, so I had no idea. But if you've never been in one, it makes extremely loud noises, all kinds of crazy stuff. Sounds like machine guns going off. Someone's hitting a piece of wood on a wall right next to your face. That's what it sounds like. It's all these crazy noises. So there was no praying happening then. So I just stuck it out, and I got 4 MRIs. I was in there. I think about 2.5 hours the first time, and they would go anywhere. They were scanning my whole body basically, so it would go from, I started out in my head, just kind of my head was in there, and then at one point I was all the way in there. And at the time, it was pretty, like I said, I'm not claustrophobic, but I also don't like feel like I'm trapped. And I was completely compressed, my hands and stuff, and my chest, and everything was compressed. And you could literally just move your head barely, and I would touch the roof of it. So I was kind of freaking out. I think the only thing that got me through it was just you have to go somewhere in your brain. I didn't want to stop it because I wanted to know. I knew these tests were important, and I wanted to get to the bottom of my issue. So there was no way I was going to press that button. They give you a button to press if you start freaking out, and they'll bring you out. So my thought was, there's no way I'm pressing this button. I'm just going to stick it out. I was in there, like I said, about 2.5 hours. And then when they were pulling me out, and I noticed this when they were kind of going back and forth, when they would pull me out, my shoulders would like scrape the sides real hard. And it felt like the table below me was going out, but I wasn't going out, like I was getting caught in there. So that freaked me out pretty bad. They finally get it over with. I get out of there, and thank God. I was just like, I don't ever want to do that again. And little did I know, that's going to be that's just the start of my introduction to MRIs. Get back upstairs, they look at the MRIs, and then they decide, trying to think of the exact order. I think at that point, they brought in the head neurologist of the hospital. She comes in with the results. She flips up the results on the screen, or shows me on the computer. There's lesions. I evidently had a small stroke. They call it an isotech stroke, very mild stroke. And there was lesions inside my spine. And she said she had never seen anything like that. And she showed me the stroke. I said, well, I never realized I had a stroke. And she goes, well, it's a very minor one. And we're seeing it a lot with, and I had told her the story of the COVID and all this. And she said, we're seeing a big uptick with strokes and heart problems with COVID-related issues. The stroke, she says, very minor, nothing to worry about. There was a little piece of something right off the, if you look at the brain, you can see the stroke area on my brain on the MRI, and then there was a little tiny mass or lesion right off of that spot. And originally she said that's probably a fat spot or something that released when I got the stroke. Something to that effect. She wasn't real, but she said, it's nothing to worry about. It's very, very small. It's not a big deal. And it is and I found out later, it is very small. It's off of there, so I'm not worried about that. But this comes into play a couple days later, really the second day. And then there were some lesions in my spine, and to me it looked like almost like worms in there. They were long, kind of worm-looking things in my spine. And she had asked me if I had been fatigued at all, and I said I've been very fatigued for 2.5 years. I said, I felt kind of like a loser all this time because I'm so fatigued. And she said, well, this is why you're fatigued, because this is cutting off spinal fluid to your lower half, and it's making you fatigued. And that was kind of like that was the first thing that really anything made me feel good, because I had felt like such a loser the last couple of years with the fatigue and stuff. I didn't know if it's because, just losing my drive or what the problem was. But even though I read up on long COVID and realized that a lot of people had that issue, I still told myself there's something wrong with me personally, because I just could not get going. So anyway, I felt good that there was actual medical reason why, instead of just in my brain or my mind. And this also I'll interject a little bit here. Before this all happened, I told my wife and my mom, I think separately, over a couple week period. This was about a month before I got COVID the second time. I said, told both of them basically the same thing. I pray for everybody else. I pray every day, but I never pray for myself. I used to do that a lot. I went through, we went through a lot of things about 10 to 15 years prior to that. that were pretty rough to get through. And I did a lot of praying back then for myself. And I got to the point where I was like, God knows what I need, and I'm really getting tired of just praying for myself. And I just need to pray for other people and just, pray my normal prayers and let God just handle my issues and stop focusing so much on it. So I got to the point where I never prayed for myself. And I literally, about a week, well, like I said, about a month before I got COVID the second time, I started praying to God about, will you please help my legs? Will you give me answers and help me get my legs back? And then I had one time was in the garage and I was dragging Bud, and I came out late. I had a couple cars to work on, and I came out late and was behind, and I was just sitting there and trying to stall out. I was in between a job, and I was like, Lord, I don't know what's wrong with me. Am I just a loser? I just kind of broke down a little bit and prayed about the fatigue, and that was the first time I had prayed about that I can think of. And so I had prayed about my problems for the first time in a long time, and then 4 weeks later, I'm basically, I was paralyzed from the waist down. I thought to myself, God, that's not really what I was, joking around, thinking to myself, like, that's not exactly what I was thinking of when I asked you to pray. But, so I just want to put that in there because that kind of comes into play later. So she says, she's never seen this type of lesion before. She has no idea what it is. And we can't really biopsy it because if we go in and biopsy your spine, you'll be paralyzed permanently. We didn't know if I was going to be paralyzed permanently or not either way, but you would definitely be paralyzed permanently from the waist down or whatever. And there's no way for us to get in there. So we need to we're going to have to do a spinal tap, and we need to find out what this is so that we can treat it. And they kind of floated the idea of going into my brain and trying to biopsy that little small part off of my stroke spot. But she said where it's at, it's kind of a dangerous, it would be a dangerous surgery, and we would like to maybe try to find where these lesions are coming from somewhere else. So they just kind of floated that the first day. And then they wanted to do so I had 3 MRIs, and then so then they sent me down for a chest. I'm trying to look at my notes here. They sent me down for some chest x-rays and things like that. And the next day I get up, and in between that, I guess that evening or whatever, my wife mentioned that I had melanoma about 12 years ago, and the neurologist really perked up when she heard that, and she said, "What?" And we didn't know that, and they wanted to know my doctor that took care of the melanoma, and just real short story behind that. I had a birthmark since I was very young, and it developed into, I guess, melanoma cancer in my late 30s, early 40s, and got it taken off, and I get checked up every year, and I haven't had any kind of relapse or anything since then. So the melanoma thing is kind of like out of my mind as far as anything to do with this. That was like 12 years ago, and I'm checked every year for, and I keep an eye on my skin. I didn't know anything about it when I first got it, but I've learned a lot about that since, and so I'm real careful with that. Anyway, once the neurologist heard that, everything about this shifted to cancer. So every single day, even starting then, this could be cancer. And every single day they would come in and tell me that I have to have cancer somewhere, and this is what's causing this. And I would ask them, I would say, well, then why 2.5 years ago when I got COVID and I was having so much trouble walking and fatigue, why did it start to get better over time? I don't know, I'm not a cancer expert, but I've never heard of anyone getting better when they have cancer. on their own, without treatment or anything. And they said, well, it's just we have to find this cancer. We need to do a PET scan on you, but we can't do. They don't have a PET scan machine at this hospital. You have to go outpatient. For them to do a PET scan on me, I had to be what they would call ambulatory, or where they can move me. I wasn't ambulatory. At that time, anytime I had to go to the bathroom or they had to move me, they had to use what I would call a cherry picker or a crane. They would come in, put this harness around me, hook it to this cherry picker or crane. I forgot what they call it. Lift it up, push a button, lift it up, and then they would just guide me to either the toilet or to another bed or wherever they were doing with me at the time. So they said you can't get a PET scan until you're ambulatory anyway, or you're able to move. So we had tried to get. They had kept on with the cancer so much. I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but we had tried to get, because there's a PET machine right across the. I got a visitor behind me. There's a PET scan machine in the same parking lot, owned by the same company, right across the parking lot. And so we had tried to get them to just transfer me over there, get the PET scan, and come back. And because of insurance issues and all that, because of insurance issues and all that, they had to kick me out of the hospital or release me, go get that, and then had to readmit me to the hospital, and they didn't want to do that because of all this insurance stuff. So I was never able to prove I did not have cancer while I was in the actual hospital. It took me like 35 days later to where I could actually go and get the PET scan. So every day I'd wake up and they're telling me I have cancer. So the third day, which I guess was the 24th, they decided they wanted to get some more MRIs, and with contrast, which is when they put dye in your vein, and it lights up differently, I guess. So I said I don't really, was real against getting MRIs. Oh, well, we'll give you something for it, blah blah blah. They take me down to do an ultrasound on the veins in my neck, and I think part of my heart or something. And while I'm down there, she tells me, hey, you're getting MRIs right after this. And I said, I don't think so, because I'm supposed to get something for it before I go down there. And she's like, no, you're getting it. So I didn't fight it because, I just wanted to get to the bottom of it. I hated the fact that I was going to have to get MRIs because of how small the machine was. And I had heard later, after I got my first set, that there's open MRIs and that they wouldn't crush me and all this stuff. So I told everybody, hey, I'm not getting no more MRIs here. You're gonna have to either knock me out or, take me somewhere else. But of course, they didn't do that. And then I was so resolved of trying to find answers that I said, whatever, just throw me in there. I think they gave me some kind of sedative. It helped a little bit. Many times, the second round of MRIs, there was 4 more. There was many times there where I was really close to pushing the trigger because I'd freak myself out. And then, I don't know, you just go to a certain spot in your brain and you just kind of like detach yourself from your body. And through a lot of the long distance training I did with bicycles and stuff, I would kind of know how to go to that spot where your brain kind of detaches from your body and you operate. So I think that helped me a lot through that. And actually, it was so tight they couldn't even put headphones in my ears for like music. I didn't find out till later that you can actually have music when you're in there. Because it was so tight, they couldn't get the headphones in there. So I get those 4 MRIs, and the next day, which would have been, I believe, 24th or 25th. They were still floating around. They actually confirmed on me on the 24th that they cannot do that biopsy of the brain. It's in a too dangerous spot. But they did say, hey, another hospital in St. Louis, it's I think one of the 3rd or 4th biggest hospital in the United States, actually. They could probably do it. So we might send you over there to have them do it. I really didn't want anything to do with any kind of brain biopsy. didn't sit right with me. I mean, it ain't gonna sit right with anybody really, but I was really against it. Told them I didn't want to do that, and they said, well, just keep thinking about it, because if we can't biopsy this or find out what this is in your spine, we won't be able to help you. So I had the fear of cancer. I wasn't so much in fear of the cancer, but every day they come in and tell you got cancer, and after a while it just wears you down. And it was multiple doctors telling me that. And then they're saying, well, we're going to have to drill into your head and find out what this is. And the whole situation was pretty stressful. And at the time, I was still, I really thought, I was completely oblivious to what the situation was. I really thought they were going to find something easy and I'd walk out of there. I had no idea that it would turn into what it turned into. And I actually wasn't even praying a whole lot. I think I was praying, but I was so wrapped up in everything they were saying and doing that I kind of disconnected myself from everything. I wasn't really speaking to God much, and I wasn't really I was just kind of like going with the flow with everything they were doing, and keep thinking that even on Wednesday and Thursday, I thought I'll be out of here by the weekend. I'll be walking, because they're going to figure this out and give me something. And this can't be anything major, because I was just walking around the week before and working. So they end up doing I think a spinal tap on the 25th, and they took out a large amount of fluid according to them, and they did like 24 or 25 tests on it. And and then they had gotten a bunch of tests back over a couple of days, and everything came back negative. They even did a cancer cell test on it. It was negative. They ran a couple cancer blood tests on me. One of them was the antigen cancer test. I don't know. They ran 2 or 3 blood tests for cancer. They didn't find negative on everything. Negative in the spinal. By Friday, so I had the whole week of them saying I had cancer and that I need to get that biopsied. By Friday, they came to me and said, look, there's nothing there's like 3 or 4 tests left for the spinal tap to come back, but they don't think they're going to find anything on it. They had already went through like 10 or 15 of the tests, and they were all negative for everything. And there was a couple that were in a petri dish that they had to see over the weekend, but they don't feel like this is going to affect anything with my care. Basically told me they exhausted all their avenues, and that I really need to go to this other hospital and get this brain biopsy. So Friday in the morning, I told them fine. I had prayed about it. I didn't really hear anything back from God. I wasn't sure, and I just left it in God. That's when I started to pray again. I left it in God's hand. I said, look, if I'm supposed to get this, then I'm supposed to get it. So I prayed about it and didn't really hear anything. And I told him, fine, whatever. If you're not gonna, I'm thinking to myself, if you can't help me, you don't know, then maybe it's better off I go somewhere else anyway. Even though this particular hospital is in my insurance, and my insurance covers this, I was to the point where I was just ready to because not to make a long story short, but that was a rough 4 or 5 days there, because every night you're in there and you kind of going in. At this point, I wasn't going into super dark spots, because deep water, because I still thought that I'm going to recover from this fairly quickly. They're going to just give me they were giving me heavy antibiotics and heavy steroids. They were kind of alternating between the two, and up until that point, I still couldn't walk or move. I couldn't even move my leg, and they were not seeing any kind of progress on anything, and they basically just decided at that point, and they had just kept beating me down with the cancer, and they don't know what it is. So I said, screw it, go ahead and put me on the list. That other hospital started calling over the weekend and asking for updates for me, and I figured I'd be out of there like Sunday or Monday. And we got to the 29th, which is that Monday, maybe the 30th. I don't know. This is when I wasn't getting picked up, and I spent the whole weekend. I was not getting any treatment. I think they were giving me steroids. Wasn't getting any better. They didn't have any answers, and I was starting to go into dark places with my faith and with the situation, because I started to realize that it was more than just me walking out of here. It was still hard for me to comprehend, because I had been walking and my legs are relatively healthy, maybe not what they were 2 years ago, but we're coming back. So I thought, this is just stupid. They're gonna find something and give me a certain antibiotic or a certain whatever, and then I'll be back to business, And over that weekend, it slowly started to dawn on me that there's not going to be anything quick on this, probably. Every once in a while, you start to think to yourself, will I ever walk again? I never really I never went to that spot throughout this whole thing. Even, now, this is October 15th, so we're five and a half, almost 6 months in on this. And I never, you can't help but think, like, I'm never going to walk again. But I never let that. I would go there for a minute or two, and then I was like, no, I don't accept that. So, I'm a realist. I know that if I can't walk again, I can't walk again. But I never let myself go there. I always contended that I was going to recover from this. So by Tuesday, they came in and they had said the rest of the tests came back on the spinal tap. Nothing negative on every single test they ran. No MS, no whatever they ran. And of course, I have an app on my phone where I can see the test before they even come and talk to me. So I would look and see the test and Google it and see what it meant. And they came to me and said, we don't know what else to do with you, basically. They won't come pick you up, or they haven't came and picked you up yet. Why don't we keep you for a little bit longer, wait for, I think, 2 more tests to come back, and then we will try to start you on rehab. Well, they had been trying to rehab me a little bit every day, maybe 20 minutes or something. It's just kind of silly stuff. And we'll get you over to the acute rehab facility that they just built. It was like $200 million state-of-the-art rehab facility. And it was literally across the street in the same parking lot as the hospital. We'll get you over there and see how it goes from there. They said basically they had gotten to the point where they gave up. They wanted to get me into rehab and into a wheelchair or whatever so that I could go get the PET scan. And they were pretty convinced that I had some kind of cancer and the PET scan would show it. And then they could biopsy a different area of my body. They were thinking that the cancer had spread to some other part of my body, and then they could get into that part of the body and biopsy it. So that's where they were leaving me with. And that weekend is when I started to go into some pretty deep waters at night. During the day, everyone's coming and visiting you. There's so much going on that your mind's pretty much occupied. I was pretty out of it during the day, not because of drugs, but I was kind of dejected, and wouldn't say I gave up on anything, but I was just basically living at that point. And I was starting to question why God hadn't spoke to me yet or sent me to, I thought maybe he wanted me to go to the other hospital and get that test. And then when that didn't happen and it fell through, I was like, he must want me here. And I don't know why he wants me here, because they're not doing anything for me. But I started, in the evenings, I would go into these pretty dark, deep waters by myself. Everyone leave, and it gets to the point where you're trying to go to sleep. And that's when a lot of things started creeping in on me. And I would say by that Saturday or Sunday, I was in mentally the worst I'd been since all this started, not because of what my legs were doing, but because I hadn't heard from God. And just a quick backstory on my faith. I some of my earliest memories, I remember speaking to God or talking to God even as a very young boy. obviously I didn't know God and didn't know Jesus and all that, but I knew there was. I always, I'm talking very young memories. I always knew there was a God watching over me, and I would speak to him even though I didn't know how to pray at the time. And as time went on, my mom got a divorce, and she put me in private school as a single mom, and sacrificed a lot to get me into private school. And I learned about the Bible there. Not it's grade school, so you learn so much, but you learn the stories and you learn about Jesus and all that. And I was pretty interested in it. I wouldn't say like I was a Bible scholar or that I was glued to listening to it, but it always interested me. And then we went to high school. She sent me to private high school, and we took theology classes, and that's when I really started to be interested in it, because the theology teacher there kind of put the stories to life, and not just like something you read as a kid or whatever. So and then, like most people, I got married young. I got married at 21 and stopped going to church. Probably in my high school years, fell away for a while. Became an over-road truck driver and I was probably 23, 24. Still believe in God. I'd actually pray to him. I didn't have what I would call a personal relationship with Jesus, or really understand the sacrifice and everything that goes with that once you discover it. And I was in a load, getting a load somewhere, out of some state. I think I was in an eastern state somewhere. Saw a Bible sitting there, took it up, started reading it, and started reading a Bible in my truck here and there, and started to pay more attention to that stuff. And then at some point, was going to a church, and really Jesus got a hold of me, or I got a hold of Jesus, whatever you want to say, and I gave my life completely over to Jesus. I finally, everything clicked, and read the Bible front to back and studied the Bible. And since then, my early mid-20s, I probably have read, without exaggerating, 200 to 300 books on apologetics and authors that I trust, C.S. Lewis, things like that. And I've continued to read the Bible studies, all that, and so it's a center part of my life, 100%. And a lot of people say it's religion. I think once you give your life to Jesus and understand the true relationship, it becomes a relationship and not a religion. And some people kind of scoff at that because people say that, but that is what it is. It's a relationship. It's the 100% center of my life, and then everything from that goes out. Now, I make mistakes. I'm not perfect, and of course I still sin. And one of the things that I've always struggled with, even from little till now, is I never felt good enough for Jesus or God. I always felt like, why would he care about me? And but I've been through a lot of hard times, like everyone has, and I always knew whenever something bad would happen or something hard I would go through, I could see God in that somewhere. Like I caught on fire from the waist up one time working on a truck, and I was trapped in the garage, and I could have died. I was probably literally a few minutes from dying, and I ended up throwing my clothes off from the waist up off, and it felt like an angel had put out. There was like this sound. It says like a whoosh sound, and it felt like an angel had just blew it out for me. And I go to the emergency room, and the first thing I see when I'm sitting there is a cross on the wall. And I had, I could see God's hand in that, that he wasn't ready for me to be home yet. And then there's been other instances. I've been in a shootout with two people. They were trying to rob me, and they shot at me, and I shot at them. And I had two guns, bullets flying by me. I actually hit the one guy. I shot him 3 times, and he fell, and he shot back. He was shooting at me while we were doing all this, but he had a .45, and he shot. It sounded like a cannon going off, because before that, the guy that was shooting at me was a smaller caliber gun, and it grazed the side of my the left side of my chest, and it felt like a burning it felt like someone lit my side of my chest on fire. And then he stopped firing at me, and I stopped going for him, and I found out later his gun had jammed. So, you know, anytime and just even like when I had melanoma and there was a lot of questions about did it go my lymph nodes or not, I could always see God's presence in my life. And this was the first time in my entire life where was praying now probably 3 or 4 days straight, and I know other people were praying for me, and I was getting nothing from God. And it started to really sink in that weekend with the brain stuff that he just wasn't speaking to me, and I didn't understand what was going on. So that's when your brain starts working overtime. And I remember one night, there's been 3 or 4 nights, the nights were the worst. Like you're out, it's literally when something like this is happening and you're not hearing, when I'm not hearing from him, it's literally like being out in the ocean in the pitch dark with a piece of wood to hang on to is what it felt like. I just felt like I was out super deep, super dark waters, and my mind would sit there and just basically attack itself. And I remember the first time that I started thinking that I wasn't worthy. I remembered the story about the king. And it's Daniel 5. It's Daniel chapter 5, and it's about Belshazzar. And you can read it if you want. It's basically God writes on the wall, mine, tekel, parson. And what that means is, mine means God has numbered the days of your reign and brought to an end. Tekel, you've been weighed on the scales and found wanting. And then Paralyzed means your kingdom is divided and given to Medes and Persians. And the thing that was sticking out in my mind was, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. And that's how I felt my whole life. I've always felt like I wasn't good enough for God. And I love God. I knew he was there, but I always had that feeling that I wasn't good enough for him. And that was kind of like sticking on my mind that night. And so that was the first thing that I thought of. And then the next night I was thinking about, I need to man up because Paul was in prison 2 years, chained, and I've only been here 6 or 7 days. And so you got all these stories going through your head. And I have a Bible app on my phone, and I get a verse every day. And I guess that Monday I got a verse, and it kind of spoke to me, or maybe that Sunday, I don't know. And it kind of spoke to me, and I thought, okay, this is the turnaround because God has spoken to me. And let me pull that verse up real quick. All right, so like I said, I was getting those Bible verses, and the one verse that got me that I thought was going to be the turnaround was Zephaniah 3:17. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves you. He will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. And that was kind of the first time that anything had spoke to me since I'd been in there. I don't know exactly what day that was. But I think it was like a Saturday or Sunday when I got that verse. And I thought this is going to be the turnaround here, and that the Lord would start speaking to me again. And it didn't happen quite that way. It still was another 3 or 4 days before we came to kind of like the point of all this. So during that time, one of the pastors from our church was coming up. I had the main pastor visited me several times, and he was real helpful. And then I had another pastor come and visit me from our church, and he was working with me pretty closely. We were kind of texting back quite a bit. And one of the things I told him was, I grew up an only child, and I've always been physically strong and capable. And I'm a mechanic, so I work on cars and am pretty good with my hands or whatever. And all through my life, everyone's always relied on me for, help, whether it's working on their cars, moving something, sometimes housework. I'm pretty skilled in a lot of different areas of a house, electrical, plumbing, whatever. So I've always been there for everyone. And for a long time, I was happy to do it, glad to do it. And then throughout the years, I kind of realized sometimes people will take advantage of you, and then it gets to the point where you realize they're not really wanting to be maybe your family member or a friend. It's more like, what can you do for them? And then the first time maybe that you don't do something that they like, then all of a sudden you're the bad guy, even though you've been there. And I experienced this. We own our own business, and I experienced that a lot through that. No matter how many times you help someone, the first time you tell them no, then all of a sudden you're just an evil person. And I just got more down, and then we had a few things with our family where I didn't agree with the way one person was speaking about another person publicly, so I kind of said something. It really wasn't even that bad. I said that, well, it doesn't matter. And I had some family members kind of turn on me. It was kind of shocking to me. And at that time, I'd already been kind of going into a shell, kind of making my life and my social circle smaller and smaller. I've always been kind of a loner, but I don't know. Just going through all the things we went through with the business and just the things that happened in my life, I was kind of just getting burned out on everything and everyone, and I was kind of making my world a lot smaller than it ever had been. And we ended up selling the business in 2019, and that's when things really, because when you own a business, we had probably 35 employees, and it got to be too much, and there was so many things going on with us, outside things affecting us, that we were miserable. I was miserable for at least 5 or 6 years before we sold it. Just a lot of different things, and I'm not going to go. That's not what this video is about. But we had sold it, and I started working out of my own shop personally, and it was by myself. So I didn't really want to go work for someone. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Just kind of like at a crossroads. I was happy working. I like working on cars. I like learning, and I've been working on cars my whole life. And then I kind of took a crash course and got kind of caught up on some of the newer stuff, and was kind of just devouring all the information I could, and was honing my skills diagnostically and stuff like that. And kind of just shut my world out. And the only people I'd really see are people that I'd work on the cars, or the auto parts guys, stuff like that. So I had made my social circle pretty small. I really didn't rely on anybody for anything, and I kind of shut myself off, except for really close friends and family, as far as being available for people on any kind of level. And in some ways I knew I should do more things and reach out, but I was just in this fog of trying to recover from the last 10 or 15 years of just being kind of miserable, especially the last 5 or 6. I'm a positive person in general, but there was a lot of misery going on the last 5 or 7 years. Probably 10 years ago. This is 2024, so we've been out 4 years, so you can do the math on that. But so I'm not used. When my legs went down, even before I went to the hospital and was paralyzed, I was not used to. I would struggle through if I had to change a transmission or an engine, had to get up and down a bunch, or be on my back and do all the stuff that I normally do. I did not call people for help. I just suffered through it and thought I was making myself stronger, and kind of prided myself in just being independent and being able to handle whatever's thrown at me. And part of the growing process through this was because I had never really had to rely on anyone else my entire life for anything, hardly. And it was very hard. It's very hard for me to ask for help from anyone anyway, just because I've been so conditioned throughout my life to help everyone else. So my wife's more of a person, she'll reach out and ask somebody for help. I'm not that person. Even after all this, I still am not really that person. But I do have it on my heart now where I'd like to reach out to people and help people any way I could, especially if they're going through this. Something's changed in me. I don't know exactly. I'm still kind of in the middle of this phase, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. But anyway, so I was having a lot of struggle with that, having to rely on other people. Like I said, I couldn't even go to the bathroom on my own. They had to use that thing, and then finally they started using a slide board. And I had really good upper body strength, always have, and was able to do things. It helped quite a bit being that I'm such a big guy, and so I was starting to get a little bit of my freedom back, but I still couldn't go to the bathroom on my own, and I couldn't move around on my own. If they put me in a wheelchair, I could wheel myself around, but so I got that verse, and then there was another 2 or 3 nights there where it was just I was really going down mentally, and it was pretty dark, probably the darkest I've ever been in my entire life by far. Just didn't understand. I thought God was going to start talking to me, and I just didn't understand why he wasn't. I got that verse on my phone. I thought this is going to be the beginning of it, and it really not much had changed. They were still talking cancer. They were still talking doing the brain biopsy and all that stuff, and they were talking about how hard rehab's going to be, and they don't even know what medicine to give me because nothing's working. So I was probably about as low as you could be. Dark, really dark. I could hardly even make eye contact with anyone. I was just kind of off my own world. And this when the doctor started floating me getting on some kind of depression medicine. And I'll say right now, I'm not against that. If you're on that or you need that, that's fine. I've never taken anything like that. I really don't take any kind of drugs at all. And I'm not like a Christian Scientist or anything. I just don't. I've always lived like if I have a problem, I want to fix it naturally, change my lifestyle, find an alternate way, because I just don't want to be on drugs. And it's not because I don't believe in them or I don't think they work. It's just that me personally, I don't want to just put a Band-Aid over a problem. I want to figure out why I have an issue and then try to fix it. With this here, the doctor came in and said, look, you lost your legs. It's just like being in a car accident. If you lose your legs, it's a traumatic experience. You're going to have PTSD over this. You're obviously having a hard time dealing with it. As far as we can see, on your face, you're not happy or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with taking drugs. And I told him no. I said that's okay. And the reason why, number one, I just don't want to take them, and it's not because I have this great faith or anything, but my faith has always gotten me through everything in my life, and that's how I deal with this kind of things. I go to God and my faith, and I wasn't sure what was going on. I wasn't sure why he wasn't speaking to me anymore, but I did know one thing, and I felt in my heart that I wanted to learn everything I could possibly learn out of this experience, and I don't think I didn't want to take something that would numb it or make it easier for me. So I knew that I personally wanted to feel every ounce of pain that I was going through, and I wanted to learn whatever God was trying to teach me. So I rejected any of that kind of medicine, and it's not out of bravado or because I think I'm a real man or anything, but it was all because I felt like whatever God's trying to teach me here, I want to be of clear mind, and I really wanted to experience the pain of all this, and so I wouldn't forget it, I wouldn't take it for granted, and I would learn from it. So that takes us into a couple more deep nights, and then we get to, I believe it was the next Tuesday, so I've been in there for a week. Yeah, and I thought I was going to start hearing from the Lord, and I really didn't. And I was having some hard nights, like always, and ended up the hardest night I had in there whenever the day shift was there, it was pretty easy to, they would transfer me to the chair. By then, I could use the slide board and almost do it by myself. We did have one incident where these two newer people came in and kind of dropped me on the floor, and I had to sit there and all that. But in general, the day people knew how to deal with someone like me that was basically incapacitated. And I was able to do quite a bit on my own as far as like moving myself with the slide board and stuff. They won't let you do that, but didn't need much help doing it. But at night it was a different story. If I had to go to the bathroom at night or anything, or if I had to move at night. Sorry about that. Someone called me. It was a doctor, so I had to answer it. Anyway, I don't remember exactly where I was at, but basically during the day, everyone was trained and everything went pretty smooth. And like I said, at night, it was like a whole different world. And I had some really good nurses, some nurses that I know God sent to me that really helped me through some rough nights, not because they knew I was going through a rough time, but because of their actions and their words. I had a really outstanding nurse from the Philippines. He came over here in the 90s and was just trying to make a better life for himself, and I know for a fact God sent him to take care of me. He was with me 3 or 4 nights and was just a great guy, and he was there on some of the hardest nights. I mean, I didn't let him know that I was going through what I was going through, but if you've been a Christian long enough, you know when God sends someone in your life and when they don't, and this guy was a godsend to me. But anyway, and he wasn't part of the problem with the thing that happened to me, but the nights are rough because they don't really know what they're doing. So the worst night I had there, and it was really the night before everything changed, they had moved me over to the toilet because I couldn't go in the regular bathroom. I had like a commode in the room, and it was a nightmare every time anyway because I couldn't clean myself up. I've never had that kind of that was horrible, and I did not want to lean on people to do that kind of stuff. And it took 3 guys. They wouldn't let me use the slide board, and I had to make 3 different. I had to go from the chair and then to the commode. They almost dropped me like 2 or 3 times. Almost ripped my IV out. And I was laying there going to the bathroom, and the one guy, I tried to take care of myself, and I fell over to the side, was almost fall off. I just laid there, and that's when I realized, it just came over me that I am at the weakest I have ever been in my life, and I'm at the most vulnerable I've ever been in my life, and I don't think that I can go any lower than this, or not that I know of. And I felt like that is the lowest I've ever been in my life, that I'm being dragged across a room, almost dropped, and I can't even take care of myself when I'm going to the bathroom. And I just laid there and realized that I was completely helpless for the first time in my life. And I've never had that feeling before that, and even since then. Just an overwhelming feeling that I'm broken. And they end up coming back and putting me in bed, and that was the hardest night. And that night I felt I was so broken, but I was also angry and rageful, and I felt like I was fighting with God mentally, and like we were in this struggle. And I remember, when he came and fought Jacob, and they fought all night, and then Jacob had a limp for the rest of his life. And I just thought of that, like, I'm here fighting, felt like I was fighting God personally, and was at my lowest of my life. And then the next morning I woke up to a Bible verse, and now someone else, hold on a second. So the next morning I woke up to a Bible verse, 2 Corinthians 12:8 through 10. It's basically, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast of my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. And it was real fitting because, like I said, the night before I'd been broken down completely and realized I was completely helpless. And I was that day I was extremely, extremely exhausted and tired, and really didn't want to even do anything at all. And I ended up, yeah, they make you do like 15 or 20 minute rehab sessions every day. And some guy came in and he knew I was a mechanic, was asking me a bunch of questions. He was the rehab guy. And I was kind of like going through the motions with him. Really didn't want to talk to him or be with him or be around there. Didn't even want to be, just like I said, I was shut down. And went through that and then kind of went through the rest of the day and wasn't sure what the day held for me, but I was just extremely tired. And so that day went by, and then that night I slept okay. Like I kind of felt like me and God had it out per se, and I knew something had to come, had to change or come. And that next morning, I woke up and one of my pastors sent me a verse, Matthew 11, which a lot of people know very well. Matthew 11:29. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. And I read that. I've known that verse. I used to have a website, and that verse was the opening of the website. So knew it well. And my thing then, and this, like I said, I'm pretty exhausted by this point, and my whole thing then was, how can I give the yoke to Jesus if I have to fight so hard for this rehab that everyone's telling me is ahead of me? I was told several times that the rehab facility I'm going to is very hard to get through. It's 3 hours a day. It's one of the hardest rehabs out there, and that stuff doesn't scare me because, like I said, I was a long distance bike rider, and I'm not afraid to push myself physically with that. But I was just confused, like, how can I give up but yet still push so hard physically? And even though I kind of knew the answer to it, the pastor was like, well, you're going to have to just do what you can do and let God do the rest. And I knew that. And oddly enough, the rest of the day kind of went by uneventful for the most part. I felt a little better. Friends were visiting me. And anyway, about 3 o'clock, or no, that was the next day. So that day went by, and then, that day went by, and then the next day I got up and was feeling a little better. I got a little bit better sleep. I was still on the 6th floor, which was rough, and was sitting there talking to one of my friends I've known forever. And out of the blue, this guy comes walking in the room. He's got a mask on, tall guy, and I don't know what it was, but I instantly knew that Jesus sent this guy. And I'm not saying this guy's a savior or something, but I knew that this guy was sent by Jesus, and that something was going to change at that point. And he came in, and he was a different neurologist. I was working with, I guess, the main neurologist in the hospital the entire time these days. And he came in, was a different one. He asked me a bunch of questions, looked me over, did a bunch of reflex tests, asked me if I could move my leg. And that morning was the first time I was able to move my foot at all. I could move my feet a little bit. And that was the first time that I was able to move my legs and my feet at all on my own. And that was that morning. And I was pretty excited about that. I actually made a little video and sent it to people, and I'll put that video in right here, and then we'll pick it back up. So you can see from that video, that's how little movement I have, but that was the most movement I've had up until that point. And this was now, what was this? This was the Wednesday. I know it was a Wednesday. Yeah, so this was now May 1st. So I'd been in there 10 days, and that's the first time I could move my foot, leg, or anything in 10 days. And then he came in and he said, would look me over and ask a bunch of questions. He said, look, we're gonna start you on IVIG treatment, and kind of went over that. I didn't know anything about it. I for a while thought I had maybe the Guillain-Barré disease syndrome or whatever, and I knew with the Guillain-Barré they did plasma exchange and they did IVIG, so I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know that much about it. And his basic thought process was, I'd rather do that and get you started on it now than realize we need it later down the road. So at that moment, everything changed. The plan was to start the IVIG that day, which was May 1st, that Wednesday. So I was 8 days in the hospital, 10 days in the hospital, and get 5 treatments. And then that 5th treatment would be Sunday, and then that Monday they would move me to the acute rehab facility. And he basically said the same thing they all said. We're going to get you to the point where you can get a PET scan and find out where this cancer's at, and then we can biopsy it, and then we can go from there. So at this point, I was so indifferent to all that cancer talk that I just went in one ear and out the other. I was 99% sure I did not have cancer. I was convinced of it. So I just kind of blew it off as another, to say that I was disappointed in the doctors there is an understatement. And I'm not blaming the doctors or saying they're bad doctors, but whatever I have, they've never dealt with, and there was not a lot of information out there. And it's just super frustrating as a person being told you have cancer every single day when you know you don't. And that's all. They got a one-track mind, and that's it. So, and I will say that all the nurses and techs I dealt with were great. I just wasn't a fan of the doctors. I didn't, like I said, it's nothing personal. I just was so aggravated because I don't ever go to the doctor or hospital very often unless I'm in an emergency room or something. And then I finally make the move and go, and then they can't tell me what's wrong with me after 10 days. So, got the treatment in the 6th floor. In the middle of the night, they came down and said, we're moving you to a different floor. I think it was the 3rd floor. And I said, okay. And they moved me in the room. And the first thing I noticed when I get in the room is there's a cross. And I've been feeling pretty good because I knew that for whatever reason, Jesus sent that doctor. And I knew that things were starting to change. He was starting to speak to me again. And I get in this new room. The floor is quiet. It's dark. The floor is actually dark. There's nobody walking around. There's no nurses at the station. It's just super quiet. It was like a totally different world than what the 6th floor was, where it was just constant. No matter what time on the 6th floor, it felt like it was like in the middle of the afternoon. It could be like 3 in the morning. It still seemed like it was the middle of the afternoon out there. So I'm in this new room, quiet room, and there's a cross on the wall. It's got the Isaiah, "Fear not, for I am with you." And that was another sign that God had finally started speaking to me again. And just a lot of peace and mostly peace and just relief came across me. And I knew that I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Still didn't know if I'd ever walk again. I didn't let that get to me too much, but I knew things had changed. And went to bed that night, woke up, and somehow I got the same guy from a couple days earlier with the rehab, and he came in and was talking to me, and somehow we got on the subject. He said, "What's wrong? You seem a little off today." I said, "No, I'm just exhausted." And so I was talking to my pastor, and he gave me a passage, and I'm just kind of trying to reconcile it in my brain. He asked me what passage it was, and I told him. And he goes, I think the Lord sent me to you today because I wasn't supposed to be on this floor, and I got transferred to this floor at the last minute. And he goes, I saw you the other day. We had a session together, and I could feel that you were a believer then, but I didn't say anything. And he goes, this time, now I'm here, and we had this little talk about taking the yoke, and he said that you got to do what you have to do. Basically the same thing my pastor said, and I knew it anyway, but it was good to have it reinforced or someone else tell me. And anyway, he basically said, you got to work hard at your rehab and let God take care of the rest. And we had a good 15-minute talk about all that, and it was another, like I said, it went from 8-9 days not hearing from God to all of a sudden I'm just hearing from him right and left. And so I get the IVIG, and I talked to him. I'm starting to feel better. Things seem like turning around. Every day I'm getting just barely a little bit more movement. And that Friday, I think it was, before I didn't get moved to the rehab until the 7th because they had me scheduled for the 6th and there wasn't a room for me, so they waited till the 7th. So I ended up being on that floor, and that floor was way more quiet and much better floor to be on. So the day after that, the next day I get up and I had this new nurse, and she comes in and she goes, "Oh, I haven't seen you before." I said, "Yeah, I just got here on this floor. I've been here, for a long time." And we got to talking. And I said, "Yeah," I said, "I went from working full time to being paralyzed." And she said, "What?" And then she asked me what happened. I told her I had COVID and all this, and she came over and it looked like she saw a ghost. She held my arm and she said, 2 years ago, I lost my husband to COVID, and she said it was out of blue. He was a pretty healthy person, and all of a sudden he just died from COVID." And I was talking to her, and I was telling her about the verse about your weakness will perfect God's strength. And she said that a year later her son died, committed suicide, and she was going to commit suicide, and she just heard a voice from God not to do it. And we were talking about that verse, and we had like a little church session there for about 15-20 minutes. And I don't know, it was crazy. It was like I go from not hearing from the Lord and being anger and rage and still trying to be independent, still trying to fight all this stuff on my own, still just kind of raging against everything. And I go from just that night where I felt like I was broken down as much as I had been, to almost hearing from the Lord daily, sometimes 2-3 times a day. And that's the whole thing of it, I think, is sometimes you can feel alone with something like this, especially something like this where almost any, I guess, disease or illness, you can feel alone. But something like this where I don't even have answers to it, I felt really alone. And it was very powerful. I feel like it changed my soul, and I felt honored to be put through the test that I was put through. I had told my wife, if I could go back to that Friday before this all happened and just stay like that the rest of my life, or if I can go through this but feel that touch from God that I'd felt the last 3 or 4 days, and learn everything that I learned and go through this, which one would I take? And I would gladly take, even though I still was not sure how this was all going to turn out. I told my wife I would gladly take this again because I felt God in such a powerful way. And I never always knew God was there, and I thought I had a strong faith. I thought my armor was battle tested, and this whole situation, I think, not only was my armor battle tested, but it was really beat up at this point. And he reached down and kind of said, "Hey, you are worthy. I do love you, and I am with you." And he sent people to kind of reconfirm that. And that was really one of the most powerful moments in my whole life with my faith and with God, and kind of brought everything together, full circle almost. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying I'm not perfect still. I still have issues, I still sin, but I still to this day say, even though I'm still struggling with this and have a lot of issues, and I'm still fighting my way through this physically, I would not trade any of it for those moments I had with God, even the hard moments, because I don't think that if I had went through that pain and went through what I went through, that I would have learned and saw what I saw. And I felt very honored to be even tested by God or picked to learn those kind of lessons like that, because you can go your whole life and not learn that much in such a short time. So I think that's where we're ended. This went probably way longer than I expected. I was thinking 30 or 40 minutes, so I don't know what this is at, but that's going to end it here. And then the next video will be on my rehab and what they're doing what they're still doing. And I got some new information just recently from my last video that may turn out to be pretty important. I'm not sure yet. I'm waiting for the test to come back. I had a test done that hasn't been done yet on me. But I'll go into that in probably a third video or something, or maybe down the road. But the next video is going to be my rehab and what they did and how they got me where I was at and how I went home and all that. So again, if you've been through this and you just want to talk and you don't, maybe you do have answers, but you think no one's out there for you or no one cares about you or you're alone, feel free to reach out to me. I'm not saying I can take all that away from you, but I can tell you that you're not alone and that there's people out there that care. And a lot of times people can't understand certain things unless they go through it. And when it comes to this stuff and my situation here, I've been through it, so maybe I can help you get through it, or at least be an ear to help and understand. So I think I'll end it here. All I can say is I was in the hospital. I finished my IVI treatment Sunday. That Sunday, thought I was going to get transferred Monday. I did not, because they didn't have a room ready for me yet. So I stayed Monday in the hospital, and then they took me out Tuesday evening actually. So I still stay. So I was in the hospital from April 22nd to officially May 7th. Then I was in rehab for quite a while. So that pretty much covers all the way up until May 7th at this point. So I'll make another video here in a little bit, part 3, about the rehab and what I'm doing, and go from there. So anyway, thanks for watching, and God bless.